For the Mets here, it just took a couple prospects, and then a couple of major league ready young talent in Jimenez and Rosario. But I think notably, it is unbelievable that they got away with this deal without trading top farm prospect. I mean, these guys are mid-level Mets prospects, and their second round picks drafted by Brody Van Wagenen, notably. So I think that was a huge reason why Sandy Alderson was really, didn't worry too much about dealing these guys. I think the next part of this, Emmanuel, is what comes next for the Mets. And I think this is an important conversation. To me, when you get Lindor, do you need Springer now? Probably not. Probably not. If they could get somebody to play a true center field for them, though, that would go a long way for this team because they face a bit of an issue with Dominic Smith in left field. And Sandy Alderson indicated very clearly that he doesn't want to see Dominic Smith play left field, and he seems to be lobbying Major League Baseball for the designated hitter in the National League. But we're not sure if that's going to happen. It doesn't appear so. So based on that, they have a defensive problem. So if it's me, I like somebody like Jackie Bradley Jr., who will play a really good center field and potentially make up for what you lose in left field. And by the way, that displaces Brandon Nimmo. So you're not sure what happens there. But if there is one move for the Mets, well, let's say two. One, it's got to be a re-sign of Francisco Lindor, long-term deal. I mean, he's only 27 years old. Give him 6-7 years. And then to me, there's still a starting pitcher that the New York Mets need to go chase, and his name is Trevor Bauer.
And if you're the Mets, you're not getting stupid here. You have more money to pay for Lindor, for Conforto, for some of these other players that are going to be part of your long-term picture. So I love the idea of a Jackie Bradley Jr. I think you add a veteran championship caliber center fielder who can play a great defensive center field. His bat is drastically improved as his career has moved along. It's not like he's incompetent when he's up at the plate. He's turned into a guy who has eclipsed an 800 OPS as of last season. So I love the idea of Bradley Jr. I think your idea is to get a competent center fielder. You don't need a superstar now that you've already acquired one. Would George Springer make this maybe a super team? The case could be made that it would be a final killer punch. But I think those resources can be better spent elsewhere. You are solidifying your status up the middle with a Jackie Bradley Jr. move. You have Lindor at short. You have McCann behind the plate. That is not a bad place to be in if you're the Mets. And then you've already shored up the back end of the rotation with Carlos Carrasco. You maybe add another piece to make sure you're not going to be shorthanded in the event of injuries. Then you invest the rest in the bullpen. Chris, I'll throw this at you. Do you really think they need a Trevor Bauer at this stage?
Look, I don't think it's a need. Especially this rotation looks really good. And the Carrasco part makes an impact because they, more than anything, need depth. But you can't rely on a Noah Syndergaard. I don't know how much you can bank on getting out of Marcus Stroman. I certainly think you hope that you get something big out of Marcus Stroman, who hasn't given the Mets a ton of innings because he opted out of last season. And he's playing for a contract, so you hope you get something there. But certainly another piece. I mean, a middle of the rotation piece would probably be sufficient in Odorizzi or something of that nature. But if they went and got Trevor Bauer, it just takes this team to another level. I mean, right now they're competitive with the Braves. They absolutely can win this division. If you, and their World Series odds are, I think, 12-1 now. If you get Trevor Bauer, forget about it. I mean, just forget about it. You're favorites to win the division. You might be favorites to win the National League.
A super rotation is what it becomes.
Yeah.
You have DeGrom, you have Syndergaard. I think people are sometimes forgetting that Marcus Stroman is back, and it's very underrated that he returned on the qualifying offer because you didn't need to pay him any sort of big money. He's on a prove-it deal. You know this guy's going to be motivated as well. I love that deal for Marcus Stroman. And then you have Bauer slotting in at number 2. That is a scary proposition for the rest of baseball. Now, could they win a World Series as constituted? I think they probably need one more pitcher. Could you take a flyer on a James Paxton? Maybe. That may be another under the radar move where high upside, low risk. You aren't getting someone who's going to be demanding a whole host of money. That's the type of move I think the Mets could make without completely handicapping themselves. But then again, what am I talking about? You have Steve Cohen now.
Yeah, I mean,
So
they want to stay under the luxury tax if possible, and I think they're getting close to 190 million, and the luxury tax, the threshold, I should say, is 210 or something like that. They probably have room for one more big deal, and it could be Bauer. If it's not Bauer, though, and if it's not Bauer, I really can't pout. I really have no right.
I
I
think you
think
can though. I think you can pout.
I don't think I can pout. I'm not gonna pout. Look, the best that the Mets have given for me over the years, it would be. I'm not a Yankee fan. Look, I know that that's how you would treat it as a Yankee fan. If
You
the
can
Mets,
get greedy though. You can get
no,
greedy. It's
well,
okay, Chris. I
we
mean, you
got
got James
Francis,
McCann.
we
You
got
got
Lin,
yeah, right.
we got Lindor. I expect them to re-sign him. And by the way, let me say this: the James McCann deal looks pretty good right now. In a market that's so terrible. And I'm imagining that they knew that they had a big fish to go get offensively. So why get Real Muto if you're going to go the Lindor direction? I mean, this trade is hard to criticize. If they don't go the Bauer direction, was where I was going. I think Brad Hand is a guy who could make a really big impact in the team's bullpen. I mean, they could use left-handed help. So if you can shorten a game with a great rotation, that's great. But the good alternative is to Bauer is a middle of the line rotation guy and a closer caliber left-handed pitcher like Brad Hand, and then maybe a Bradley Jr. Maybe you go offense. I do think this team has one more big move in it before all is said and done before spring training.
It would feel a little empty. That's why even though they just got Lindor, it's hard to accelerate what's already been a pleasing week for Mets fans. If you just go into spring training, and I don't think this will happen, but if you went in with Lindor, James McCann, Carlos Carrasco, something would feel out of the mix. You'd feel like you're almost there, but you're not quite there. Does that mean it needs to be a Bauer? Does it even mean it needs to be a starting pitcher? I'm not sure about that. The bullpen's been a big Achilles heel throughout the last decade of Mets baseball. So I would tend to lean in that direction. Is Seth Lugo a starter this year? Or is he a bullpen arm? Because if he's a bullpen arm, your bullpen becomes that much better already without adding a Brad Hand. But if he's a starting rotation arm, maybe you don't need Bauer. And then you add to the bullpen. So I think that's a big X factor there for the Mets.
I think it is too, and I think that Lugo is a bullpen guy because he really gives the bullpen something it needs. Especially it's going to lose Justin Wilson. Obviously, they went out and got Trevor May, which is important. But I think the bullpen is always a Mets concern for me, and I like Lugo there. I like Gazelman there, frankly, too. I like David Peterson in the rotation. Obviously, a lot of hope for the Mets.